There aren't many games that I can say are universally loved, but I really do believe the Trials games fall into that very category. They offer the perfect pick up and play I'm always looking for, and in case this commentary isn't sounding cliche and generic enough, they are easy to pick up and play, but hard to master. I'll be talking about what I do and don't like about Trials, specifically the Trials HD, Fusion, and Rising games. I'm aware there's also some Flash Trials games, Trials Evolution, but I've never played those, and I would really prefer to talk about the games I grew up with and love unconditionally. But first, to elaborate on what I said a minute ago, the Trials games are pick up and play perfection. It's a physics based game where you control your rider on the bike, and all you gotta do is cross the finish line. Slow or fast, as long as you cross the finish line, we're all wieners. Winners. Whether you're good or bad, young or old, anybody can have a huge amount of fun. The tracks are pretty short, so you can clear your track in about 30 seconds. But there have been days where I lose track of time. I lose track of time. Get it? Because I lose track, and I'm talking about tracks, and I end up playing a few hours straight, even though I like men. Anyways, I end up playing for a few hours nonstop, and for anyone that knows me, they know a game must be incredible for me to play for more than an hour without taking a break, because I have the attention span of a newborn. The tracks for the most part are short, and on the surface, the mechanics are basic, making the game seem almost bare bones, but that couldn't be any further from the truth. I actually felt very underwhelmed when I first played Trials HD on Xbox Live Arcade. Now, how many of us remember that? I certainly don't. You'd have to be a dinosaur to remember that. The tracks are over pretty quick, but if all you're trying to do is pass with the bare minimum requirements, the game is over way too fast and you do yourself a disservice, robbing yourself of a wonderful experience. The simplicity of the Trials games is perfect for younger players who may have never played anything that had a high skill requirement. Because kids are dumb! Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I present to you exhibit number 1. It gives them the opportunity to make it through most of the game without encountering a skill check until later in the game. And trust me, there is a skill check later on. I've still only been able to pass only one of the extreme tracks. On the other hand, if you have been playing the Trials games for years and have acquired true gamer skills, there is no question in my mind that you will be struggling with these games. I have been playing Trials since 2012 when I first discovered Trials HD, and I have yet to get a single gold medal on any of the extreme tracks. Going for more than just the bare minimum, you can easily sink hundreds of hours into each of these games. When you get to the more difficult tracks, you can't simply rely on just smashing the gas. You're gonna have no choice but to learn throttle control. Sometimes you're gonna need a lot of speed to clear certain gaps, but there will be times where you'll need to be more calculated. If you don't get enough speed, you won't clear the gap. But if you get too much speed, you can end up bonking your head on some overhead obstacles. Or you might overjump the landing and end up falling into an abyss, a dark and empty void, just like my heart. 'Cause I'm a sad boy. But that method is only going to get you so far. Again, it's a totally usable method if you like to suck dick and cock for less experienced players, but trying to get a gold medal for every track is a real bread and butter of the game. It is definitely a challenge, but when you're able to lock in and do everything right and efficiently, it can be incredibly fulfilling. The way they implemented throttle control was a genius method of teaching you to slow down to get a faster time. The perfect example that proves slow is fast and fast is smooth. Throttle control is very important, but without the proper leaning technique, the wheels fall off. You have to learn the proper leaning technique to jump off ramps and how to land properly in order to set yourself up for the next jump. Trials gives you the ability to load your suspension, giving you another mechanic to master. When you make it to extreme difficulty tracks, there are many sections where you need to load your back wheel suspension in order to clear the gap. And while you're in the air, you also need to start setting yourself up for a good landing to be able to complete what the game calls consecutive bunny hops. They look easy, but in reality, there is so much skill that goes into it. Just the other day, I had over 300 attempts trying to clear one single jump because the platform I was landing on was barely big enough for both of my wheels to land on top of, giving me barely any room to get any speed to clear the next obstacle. With over 300 attempts, you could assume I was feeling frustrated, but you would be wrong. Like always, I was having a good time despite the fact I was falling over and over again, because I really do enjoy the tracks that require more of a slow and methodical approach. Looping around to my first point about how both beginners and experts can have fun is the track design. I briefly mentioned gold medals, and getting them is obviously easier said than done. The game will give you a time to beat and a limit as to how many faults you can have. For example, the game will tell you to complete a track in 45 seconds with 0 faults. In other words, complete the track as fast as possible with no mistakes, essentially turning the beginner tracks into extreme difficulty, more so if you go for the platinum. That's right, there are platinum medals in the games, just in case you didn't think gold medals were difficult enough. If it makes you feel any better, I feel like you need to be superhuman to get all the platinums, but at the same time, I know my limits and my goal has always been to get gold on all tracks, and I have never really made an effort to getting all the platinums, but maybe one day. I'm sorry I spent so much time explaining the mechanics of the Trials games, but they're basically the same in all three, so that way I could get that out of the way and just talk about my experience with each game. So without further ado, let's begin with Trials HD. I first played Trials HD in 2012 on Xbox Live Arcade. And no, I'm not old. If anybody mentions that, I'm gonna have to find you. And man, what a nostalgia trip. The song that plays when you boot up the game really hits me in the feels, transporting me back to my carefree high school days when my biggest concern was getting all my homework done Friday afternoon so I could spend all weekend playing Xbox 360. There are no words to describe how good I feel when I boot up Trials HD and I hear that intro, and then the menu music also has the grungy look and sound that represents us 90s kids. Story or heavy action based games are cool and all, but when I wanted something simple and fun, Trials HD was and still is always there for me. I'm still playing this game in 2025, and I feel like the graphics have held up incredibly well, and because of the art style, it has aged like a fine wine, making this more than playable, and dare I say, better than a lot of modern day releases. Talking about art style, the whole game takes place in a factory, and I don't know what it is about factory levels in video games, but I can't get enough of them. Based solely on the aesthetic, I can tell you there is not a single track I don't enjoy. In my opinion, the industrial look is timeless, and it gave the team much more options and creativity when it came to creating obstacles. There will be huge pipes that you ride. Huge pipes that you ride. There will also be pipes and obstacles overhead, forcing you to slow down or knock your block off. Just like in any real life factory, there are lots of warning signs warning you of a steep drop or to watch your head, fitting perfectly with the factory theme so they never look out of place. When it comes to the physics, I'm really struggling to explain it. I'm really trying to not compare the games, but they didn't get the physics fine-tuned until Trials Fusion. But that doesn't mean the physics in Trials HD are bad, far from it. Instead of the finely tuned and realistic physics from the later games, Trials HD perfected the arcade feel. Believe it or not, I don't know anything about physics. Most of the science I know I learned from Bill Nye, but either way, I wouldn't change a thing about it because why mess with perfection? When it comes to content, this game doesn't have a whole lot. But what it does have is curated. Like I mentioned before, most of the playtime comes from the difficulty. I've always been afraid of what I'm going to do when I'm so good that the game can't offer me a proper challenge. And today I have learned, and I'm very happy to confirm, this is not going to be an issue. I'm always bouncing between HD, Fusion, and Rising, as well as a library of games, so it's not uncommon for me to overcome a challenge, put the game down for a bit, and be total trash when I come back. Today I tried getting the platinum, and I did so bad. The last time I had tried it, I was only one fault away from the platinum, so I figured, hey, if I just grind this track for a bit, I should be able to get the platinum in an hour or two tops. But back on planet Earth, I could not for the life of me get past the second to last obstacle. As you can see, it's a crate tilted down towards the ramp, and I gotta climb up and over the crate. And as you can also see, I was either losing all momentum or bouncing off the crate too much to stick my front wheel on top of the crate. I know I've done it before, but today it took me over 200 tries and I still couldn't get it. That just goes to show this game is always going to give you a challenge. Play at your own risk. The skill games, aka mini games, for the most part are only okay. There's 12 skill games, but there's only 2 I come back to every now and then. The first being Delivery, a game which could have been great because it's about pulling a trailer loaded with explosives and any jarring movement could set them off. So the idea is to get as far as you can without setting off the explosives or until the timer runs out, which is the very reason why I say this skill game could have been great. I would have preferred no time limit and instead making the track increasingly difficult until making a mistake became inevitable, thus ending your run. I wish I had more to say, but this game is very simple. Which, when you think about it, the only complaint I have is that they're too short, just goes to show that these mini games are still decent and a good time. Now when it comes to Hill Climb, that's a skill game I could play over and 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 over. All you gotta do is climb up the ramp as fast as you can, and the simplest mistake ends your run. Then you do it again, rinse and repeat. I barely made it past the 100 meters mark, and I've been trying to reach the finish line, which at this point, I'm not even sure if it exists. So I went to this website, www.youtube.com, where I saw a trials player 150 meters, and that was 15 years ago. And the cherry on top is a hill climb doesn't have a time limit. It's just you, your skill, and the mountain standing before you waiting to be conquered. What makes it both painful and enjoyable is making it to the 80 or 90 meter mark, and you gotta realize at this point you've been jumping over gaps and while climbing up the ramp at an almost 90-degree angle and you lean a little too much, you try to plant your back wheel on the ground to try and get some traction, but you overcorrect and give it too much gas, and the next thing you know you're tumbling down the mountain along with your hopes and dreams. Forget Dark Souls difficulty, you can cheese that with magic builds any day of the week. But Trials HD, that's for big boys. I feel like Mr. Yappington over here, talking a whole lot but not saying anything. So I'm gonna wrap up this section by saying Trials HD is incredible, a classic, and more than playable by today's standards. So when you're asking yourself why you're such a big loser, it's because you haven't played Trials HD. After Trials HD, Red Lynx released Trials Fusion, and this is the game where I feel they got the physics just right. It feels like when you pull off a majestic wheelie, it's all you instead of all luck, and the weight of the bike feels realistic. So even though I've never ridden a motorbike in real life, this is how I imagine it would feel. Red Lynx could have stopped right there. They got the physics dialed in, gave us new tracks, what else could we ask for? My peanut-sized brain had no idea, but Red Lynx, they're the ones who give good head. I mean, a good head on their shoulders. They saw us struggling to get gold on all of the tracks, and I'm sure only a handful of people actually got more than a few platinums. So the developer said, if you don't stop crying, we'll give you something to cry about. And that's what they did. This time around they added diamond medals just in case platinum was too easy for you. Fun fact, the YouTuber archivist, he actually platinumed Trials Fusion. And he said it took him over 200 hours to get the platinum. And I just know there's no way I'm gonna be able to do that. He makes it look easy and I really recommend watching his video. I keep watching it over and over just because of how much I love these games. But anyways, this is way out of my skill set and I'm not gonna be doing this anytime soon. I guarantee that. To start off, you're no longer in a factory setting. You're outside in the valleys, the desert, mountains, sometimes in the snow or even a thunderstorm. There's a great variety of locations and I love them all. The game is also a lot brighter and I want to say the game is a lot more cheerful since most of the tracks take place outside during the day and in nature, and that's gotta be one of my favorite changes. The dark and grimy settings of Trials HD was cool. I'm not trying to take anything away from that, but I do prefer the tracks and the aesthetic Fusion offers. The rays from the sun and how it looks makes me feel like I'm actually outside getting some vitamin D. Or in my case, it makes for a good substitute on a cold, snowy day. I wanted to talk about my favorite track environment, but I couldn't do it. Trying to pick a favorite is like trying to pick a favorite child. You think you know who you would pick, but on the record, you love them all the same. But seriously, I have so many good things to say about all the tracks that trying to pick a few felt overwhelming. They also added challenges to every track. When I first learned about them, I assumed they were going to be boring and easy, designed to pad out playtime, but I was wrong. I'm just now realizing I'm wrong a lot. I used to think I had to wear a helmet on the bus to protect my genius brain. Now I'm not so sure. Some of the challenges I found really fun. For example, the Afterburner challenge at Echo Park, where your bike is boosted and you have to fly through the rings to get more boost in order to be able to reach the finish line. It's basically the fire ring skill game from Trials HD, except better. Another example of a fun challenge is the Full Throttle challenge at Skyscraper Showdown. The goal is to perform a zero fault run without letting go of the gas or using the brakes. The first thing you gotta do is memorize the track, and that is not optional. Second, you've gotta jump prematurely. If my performance in the bedroom is any indication, this shouldn't be a problem. If you treat this like any normal run, you end up overshooting the flat top of the ramp, leaving you unable to clear the gap, making your chance of success slim to none. The best way I found to clear the gap is when you're about halfway up the ramp, lift your back wheel so that you lose momentum, and that way you end up landing perfectly on top of the ramp, and there you just do a simple bunny hop, easily clearing the gap. That's what I love about these challenges. It encourages you to tackle obstacles in a different manner than you normally would. There are so many challenges I enjoyed and some that I don't enjoy at all, but I'll get to that in a minute. There's also the flipping challenges. And no, I'm not using the word flipping as a substitute for the F word, cause I can use the F word as much as I want. You frickin' frick. What the frick? The flipping challenges are literally about doing a certain amount of flips on your bike before reaching the finish line, or a certain amount of flips with zero faults. These are some of my favorite challenges in the game. They are very fun and a great segue into the topic of zero fault runs. Zero fault runs are extremely challenging, but they are hands down my absolute favorite type of challenge. It really tests your skill as well as your ability to stay cool under pressure. The most difficult zero fault runs I've experienced involve using the Rabbit. For those of you who don't know, the Rabbit is just a normal run-of-the-mill mountain bike. And I love this bike. I use it every chance I get. I don't know if it's just because it's quiet and I'm actually able to hear the music or the sound of the bike chain that transports me to back in the day, but if the track allows it, this is the bike I'm using. The Rabbit isn't as fast as the other bikes that have engines, which also means clearing some would-be easy gaps becomes much more difficult. The Rabbit is basically the Dark Souls of bikes. Yeah, I said it. I've actually completed all the normal zero fault runs except for the ones that require you to use the Rabbit. Anyone who's familiar with Fusion more than likely know about Rock of Ages and how difficult it is. I've seen YouTubers do it and honestly, it didn't look too hard, so I thought I'd give it a shot, only to not even make it halfway before getting stuck. It was taking me over 50 tries to make it past some of the early obstacles. That alone speaks volumes about the difficulty, so I knew there was no chance I was going to be able to do a zero fault run anytime soon. Looks like I'm gonna need another 100 hours to even have a remote chance, so my day was going great. Seriously, it was going great because it means I'm gonna get to keep playing this game forever. I'm glad to say Hill Climb, this time called Ice Climb, has made a return and it's way better than the one in Trials HD. For one, This time there's more variation in the obstacles. Instead of going straight up non-stop, this time you have the opportunity to stop and take a breather and set yourself up for the next jump. Or sometimes just to balance yourself on a platform that's barely big enough for your bike. Overall, involving all the basics of bike positioning, throttle control, and loading your suspension. And second is the fact that it takes place on a snowy and desolate mountain. It really feels like you're isolated from society. It's just you and the mountain. Again, I don't know what it is about playing snow levels while it's snowing in real life, but it all ties together perfectly because your character is in the snow, then you look out the window and it's snowing. It makes the experience that much more immersive. My record so far has been 78 meters, and I need to make it to 100 meters for the platinum. And even if you reach the platinum, you can keep going until you eventually lose. Speaking of mountains to conquer, there's another skill game called hard wheeling. The game tells you your front wheel is loose, so you gotta ride as far as possible while on your back wheel. And the other day I played it again, and I finally got gold. I don't know how I did it, but I did it, and I'm proud of myself. The genius of this skill game is they literally made a skill game to help you practice your wheelies. The whole track is littered with technical jumps, so even making it a short distance, you will still feel a sense of accomplishment. Knowing how to do wheelies is one of the advanced mechanics you're gonna need to learn to make it through some of the more challenging challenges. So I have to applaud Red Links for being able to combine and disguise a practice or tutorial level into an extremely fun skill game. I was speechless when I first realized the big brain intelligence of what they had done, and who wouldn't be? This is brilliant game design. My second favorite skill game after Hill Climb, because nothing beats Hill Climb, is Infinite Trials, which are randomly generated levels in a small self-contained room. They're very short tracks involving between 3 and 5 jumps, but that doesn't take away from the charm and the fun factor. It takes place in an empty void, and it uses the cool neon colored obstacles. You only get 3 lives, and oh boy, you're going to burn through them real quick. And that's about it. Oh, and since it's randomly generated, it's literally an infinite amount of trials. So the fun never has to stop. When I first heard about Infinite Trials, I assumed the first 10 or 20 levels would be easy and slowly ramp up in difficulty, becoming a test more about patience instead of skill, and I'm glad to say I was wrong. Again, if you look at how many extreme tracks I have cleared, you can clearly see I am no expert, but I like to think I'm above average, and I've only been able to make it to level 5. So this game does not go easy on you. If you want to make it into double-digit levels, you're gonna need to learn how to fap. We should all be fapping. If you want to win in life, you gotta fap. If you want to level up in life, you gotta fap. For legal purposes, I'm not going to elaborate anymore. All you gotta know is I've seen other people fapping, and I'm always impressed. And the layout of the levels is different every time. All that just to say Infinite Trials offers infinite hours of fun. If I had to pick one game to take to a deserted island, Trials Fusion would definitely be a top contender. You thought I was done, huh? Well, much like Trials Fusion, this is the gift that keeps on giving. There's a little something for the most dedicated Trials players in the form of ninja tracks, which are even more difficult than extreme tracks. Not just anyone can just boot up the game and attempt to clear a ninja track. You have to earn the opportunity by no faulting one extreme track. There are 5 ninja tracks in total, and to unlock each one, you have to no fault the corresponding extreme tracks. I would love to have more to say about the ninja tracks, but I've only made it through one extreme track with way more faults than I should have, so needless to say, I haven't actually experienced a single one. I'm not trying to hide the fact it's a skill issue, but I got a better chance of talking to a woman in real life than I do of seeing the ninja tracks. Unfortunately, not all of the challenges are this fun. This is the first and last game that had a trick system, and for good reason. Some of these trick challenges want you to do a very specific trick over a certain obstacle, but I felt like the game wouldn't actually register that trick I had just done, Or maybe I was a half second late of where the game wanted me to land, or I was holding the stick at a slightly different angle. The the uh the thumbstick, you guys. Get your mind out of the gutter, ending with me having to repeat the trick again and again until it worked. Instead of feeling good about completing the challenge, it just felt like a relief getting it over with, knowing I could move on to something that was actually fun. In my opinion, the trick system felt tacked on because Trials is more about making small, calculated movements, which is counterintuitive to the over the top moves the game expects you to do. A little bit of foreshadowing on one of the loading screens for Trials Rising, the game tells you, and I quote, "It may look cool, but airtime is not your friend. Minimize your height to get a faster time." End quote. Which is why I believe it doesn't mesh all that well. So for the most part, I would completely ignore the trick challenges unless I was forced to complete them in order to be allowed into the next area. But once I did complete them, that was it. They were a one and done scenario. And the same goes for the skill games. Most of them are based around getting points by doing tricks. So once I completed these skill games, I never went back to play them again. Thankfully, the trick system was the only thing I didn't like about Fusion. Not because it was necessarily bad, but not well implemented. With every trick challenge, I felt bored, with it never really piquing my interest. For example, there were the challenges where you had to cannonball into the pool. It was very simple and very boring. The definition of busy work, with the only difficulty being that I didn't know which button I had to press to do a cannonball. And there's no trick guide in the game. I couldn't find the answer on Google, so it left me watching countless YouTube videos until somebody finally explained how to do it. Hence why I gave this challenge a Yelp review of 1 star. Trust me, if I could have given them 0, I would have. What I can never call boring are the wheelie challenges. This time, Red Links went too far. I mean, I like it rough, but I wasn't expecting the whole 12 inches. The shoddy workmanship challenge on Temple Trouble was so hard, but I felt it was fair. You had to get through the track without letting your front wheel touch the orange scaffolding. The last jump was brutal and it took me hours, but I never felt like it was unfair. Whenever I would fail the challenge, I knew what I was doing wrong and what I had to improve in order for me to complete it. Then there's the most infamous challenge in the whole game, pipe phobia. And if you've ever played Fusion, you know where this is headed. The goal is not to let your front wheel touch any of the pipes, and for the most part it seems doable. That is, until you get to this one pipe. Look how long it is. It's almost as long as my dick. And if you manage to get this far, you end up failing the challenge because of the way you have to land on the pipe. The way you land on the pipe. You get it? Oh, I don't think you get it. So, pipe is another word for dick. You lose a lot of speed and you have to land doing the wheelie and continue doing the wheelie while also gaining speed to make it up the hump at the end of the pipe. This one pipe is the reason I and thousands of players have never been able to complete this challenge or 100% the game. Now, these aren't the only challenges that seem impossible, especially when you take a look at the DLC, but I do want to make one thing clear. I started this section thinking I hated these wheelie challenges, but I've had a change of heart. See? Here it is. Jealous, huh? Well, I thought you might be. Because how often do you see such a rare card like this? And don't try to lowball me because I know what I got. Now back to the matter at hand. In all honesty, I don't think I'll ever be able to complete the Pipe Phobia challenge or the no fault runs with the rabbit at Rock of Ages, but I'm glad these challenges exist to push and encourage us to do better. They only seem impossible, but I've seen other people do it, so I know it can be done. After I gave up on these challenges is when I realized why I was feeling so frustrated. I spent a whole week trying to complete all the challenges as fast as I could. I wasn't doing the speed run, but I wanted to get those done and then move on to getting the gold medal on all the tracks, and that was the wrong approach. Trials is about getting the fastest time, but it's not about rushing the experience. You can't realistically pick up a game and expect to be a pro after 80, 90, or even 100 hours. It takes time. This is not a game you can brute force your way through to victory. Just before replaying Trials Fusion, I beat one of my favorite games of all time, as well as the best Souls game ever, Lies of P. It should come as no surprise, I struggled with Laxasia, but after a few attempts, I was starting to learn her second phase, and I realized I could make it a bit easier on myself if I did a little bit of grinding and improved my stats. And the point I'm trying to make is, Trials is not like other games where maybe you're taking the wrong approach, or maybe you can do a bit of grinding here, a bit of grinding there, and finagle your way to victory. In Trials, more than any other game I've ever played, you have to get good. There is no luck where my opponent will mess up like Need for Speed, where you can make some small mistake and still walk away a winner. It's just you, your skill, practice, and learning from your mistakes. All I can really say is don't rush to the finish line. Metaphorically, of course. It's more about the journey than the destination. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta get in my Subaru and go to Starbucks for my venti caramel macchiato. I am so sorry, but I couldn't find a good spot to talk about the soundtrack, so I'm just going to add it here. Again, just like in Trials HD, the intro song is amazing. It really gets you hyped up to play, and it also hits me in the balls. Feels. The first time I booted up Fusion, I was on vacation from work, so I was living carefree in that regard, and there was a snowstorm raging outside, so it was a perfect day for a roaring fire in the fireplace, hot chocolate, and spending all day inside playing Trials. Now every time I boot up Fusion, I get transported back to that glorious day. The rest of the music also fits the game and the theme perfectly. Not as great as sports games from the 2000s, but still very, very good. Except the intro song. The intro song is on par with Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's intro song. In other words, it doesn't get any better than this. A fun fact I didn't learn until way too late is that the writer is voiced by Dan Castellaneta, the guy who voices Homer Simpson from The Simpsons. Yeah, I know, I really had to put my detective hat on for this one. He doesn't talk, but you can definitely tell it's him when you do something cool or make it over a massive jump. And he also screams when you mess up. It's cool because they could have easily overdone it or added unnecessary dialogue, but they got it just right. And very cool to have such an iconic and one of my childhood favorite characters be a part of one of my favorite games. Last, but certainly not least, we've got Trials Rising. But first I got a bit of housekeeping to do. I don't want to repeat myself too much, so I'm not going to talk about the physics since they remain the same from Fusion. What they did change was getting rid of the trick system and in turn getting rid of the more boring and time-wasting challenges, so in all honesty, I really don't mind. Which, thinking about it, when you don't mind having the feature removed just goes to show how undercooked it was. Just a reminder, these are only my opinions, so please be gentle. Another quick reminder, please like and subscribe. And as much as I love Ninja Tracks, I feel like I don't have anything to add to the conversation since I'm not even good enough to participate. It's 2025 and I'm still struggling to get anything better than bronze on extreme tracks. But I've learned to accept it's a skill issue and I'm gonna need a whole lot of practice, but I'll eventually get there and the wait and payoff will be totally worth it. With that out of the way, why don't I start with the music? The intro song, I'm sad to say I'm indifferent to because it's just kind of there. Very genetic and forgettable, and compared to the previous intro songs, this one is just kind of lame. I feel like I'm starting off on the wrong note. Get it? Note? Like how music has notes? On the other hand, the music during gameplay did improve a lot. This time they really got the 90s punk rock sound down to a T. This soundtrack can go pound for pound with games like the MX vs ATV, the Midnight Club, or GTA series. In fact, I would even go as far to say it's on par with PS2 era sports games. Yeah, it's that good. In case you don't believe me, well, you know I can't play the songs, but I'll name off a few of the bangers. They've got Scars by I Prevail, I'm Dead Again by Sum 41. That's right, Sum 41. Anyone who listens to Sum 41, you're a dinosaur. No, I'm just kidding. You're a certified badass. But also, you're a dinosaur. The only negative thing I've got to say about the music is it didn't include Blink 182. But hey, this soundtrack is a million times better than what we're getting with modern releases. Obviously, the developers are the rough and tumble, badass bikers, roundhouse Chuck Norris type rock stars, but they can also be classy and sophisticated. The proof is in the pudding, aka soundtrack. Because they even added classics like Air on G String and Symphony Number 5. I never knew I would enjoy classical music this much, but thank you Trials Rising for showing me the light. One of the major improvements was the atmosphere. I never thought about it this deep, but looking back I can definitely tell the difference. For example, instead of a list of tracks to pick from, you now have a world map. You start off in the US and you can go to Africa, Canada, China, and a whole lot more. Whatever location you want to go to, this game has got it. There's also a few tracks on the ocean, and you can go as far as the North and South Pole. Even the loading screen is awesome. I can't believe I'm about to review a loading screen, but here it goes. The loading screen is totally tubular, bruh, just like Jonathan. So, while you're on the loading screen, there will be a smoke machine and spotlights pointed at you, making you feel like a WWE superstar. You'll also be standing next to the Red Links developers' characters, making it feel more like a competition between friends. And after the race, the crowd will be cheering for you as well as confetti raining down on you, giving the game a much better feeling of celebration compared to the previous games. Then there's the actual gameplay, where you're at the starting line. Sometimes you'll have an OSHA looking guy wearing a safety vest and hard hat, or security guards keeping people behind the guardrails, adding to the feeling of being a superstar who's there to put on a spectacular show for the crowd. But my absolute favorite is when I see the spectators crowding around me, cheering me on, and if the track allows, you can see them on the ground looking up at you. And then seeing them at the finish line waiting for you really makes the whole world feel so much more alive, giving it the perfect Forza Horizon Festival type of atmosphere. Nothing exemplifies this more than Hill Climb. Like most tracks, it starts with the crowd spectating and cheering you on, but you also see a gigantic statue of a rider in the center of the arena. Then the gate drops and you make a WWE entrance with flames shooting out of the ground. You slowly start going up the man-made structure and the cheers begin to get quieter the further up you go, and before you know it, it's radio silence. Once you get to about 100 meters, you realize two things. First, the structure you're climbing is massive. 100 meters is no small feat because it's meters. And yet, you're not even close to done. And two, you're really high off the ground. And if you fall, or I should say, when you fall, is when you get a real scope of the magnitude of this man-made structure. I've fallen from 150 meters before, not in real life, dummy. And you fall for what feels like a really long time, and your character is screaming in fear and desperation the whole time. When your character hits the ground, he hits the ground like a sack of potatoes. And a really nice touch, your bike breaks into multiple pieces upon impact. The body of the bike is over here, the front wheel and suspension is over there, and overall, a nice attention to detail. If on your way up you're able to find a safe spot and take in the environment, you see people on the ground that look like ants because of how high you are, and you see people hanging out in groups and around buildings. Some are just hanging out by their cars, and you can see this for miles, making the festival feel alive and like I'm really there. I've never been to Burning Man, but I've seen pictures, and now whenever I'm on the hill climb, I feel like I'm really putting on the show at Burning Man, encouraging me to not just do my best, but to also give people a show they will never forget. Following the festival theme of people getting along and having a good time, I've got to give a shout out to the Trials community. I first played Rising about 2 weeks after it released, and at the time, and to this day, I enjoyed playing Dirt Rally and posting times to the leaderboard, And I remember I was able to get in the top 10 in the US. So then I played Rising and I was overflowing with confidence. And for some reason I thought I could jump in headfirst into multiplayer and dominate my competition. Long story short, I got destroyed, absolutely demolished. Then I got a notification that one of my opponents sent me a message, and I'll put his name on the screen if it's still saved onto my Xbox. But anyways, a huge shout out to him. You're a legend. Based on previous experiences, Rocket League, more like Toxic League, am I right? I was certain this person had sent me a message telling me how much I suck and I should never play this game again. So I reluctantly opened the message, and instead of hate, this legend was speaking encouragement. He explained that I needed to play the career mode first in order to unlock the mantis, or else I wouldn't stand a chance at being competitive. He then sent me some videos of his impressive runs and the advanced techniques he was pulling off, ultimately encouraging me to keep on practicing. This has been the most wholesome experience I've ever had online and one I'll never forget. Leading up to the release of Rising, all I had been playing was Dirt Rally, and after having a below average performance and seeing the tricks this guy was able to pull off made me realize I had to get back to basics. And what better place to start than University of Trials? I am so glad they put this in the game because now you're able to literally go to school and practice the fundamentals and giving you a letter grade based on how good you did. Just like a report card. And I'm not going to show you mine, so don't even ask. All I know is I need my parents' signature and my teacher wants it back Monday morning. A funny little detail most people might have missed is if you haven't set a best time for a track in the career, it'll only tell you the requirements for the bronze medal. But in the University of Trials, if you haven't attempted any of the courses, you automatically get an F. Just like in real life, there's a saying that goes, you only fail when you stop trying. Or if you don't like and subscribe, you also fail. You fail at life. The Trials of University has 12 courses and I really recommend you don't try and grind them out thinking you can force your way through. So those are my 2 cents. The University of Trials was an amazing quality of life improvement. So if you're scared, go to church. If you suck, go to school. If you suck and you're a torta... Oh, hold on, give me a second. My lawyer's calling me. Hey, what's up, Chief?
Don't you say it.
Don't say what?
Don't you finish that joke you were about to say.
But why not?
Don't you say another word until I get there. Goodbye.
I'm glad to say contracts, also known as challenges in Fusion, have made a comeback and overall are way better. But they do have a bittersweet aftertaste, leaving me conflicted and unsure where to begin. I'm not saying it's bad, not at all. So I'll start off with what left me, we'll say, disappointed. And it only goes up from there. The only complaint I have is they kind of ruined the zero fault runs. And by that I mean they nerfed the difficulty. In Fusion, these kind of challenges ask you to make it through with 0 faults. But now the game will ask you to make it through the track with a max of 5 or 6 faults, something like that, which is where the bittersweet aftertaste comes in. I feel like the tracks in Rising are a bit tougher than Fusion, so I totally understand why they took this approach, but because now you can make a couple mistakes and still complete the contract, it feels like a lot of the tension and butt-clenching moments have been greatly reduced. But here's where the love-hate relationship comes in. There's a lot more contracts asking you to do a certain number of flips without faulting, or a certain number of flips while catching up to the silver bullet. Those challenges were awesome and really put your track memorization skill to the test, especially when you realize they give silver bullet a head start, putting you at a major disadvantage, but it's still a boatload of fun. So it's been a while since I last mentioned it, but you might recall I said the pipe phobia wheelie challenge was incredibly difficult to the point of breaking hopes and dreams. But at the end of the day, I was glad these types of challenges existed to give elite players an extra bit of content to enjoy without it feeling like a piece of cake to complete. I meant what I said and I stand by it. But they must have thought 12 inches wasn't enough, so they came back with a yardstick. The Venice Beach 360 track is one of the tracks you get to play early on in the game and is ranked as an easy difficulty. But the contract, called Extreme Boarding, tells you your bike has a front wheel that has a screw loose, much like myself after playing this game. So the contract is asking you to make it through the whole track while doing a wheelie. I'm pretty sure you can tell where this is going, especially on this track, which is a skate park. I can't even comprehend how this is even possible. Venice Beach 360 Extreme Boarding makes pipe phobia look like child's play. And this is just one example. It feels like they saw the amount of wheelie challenges in Fusion and somehow said, we need more wheelie challenges. Increase it tenfold, which I can't stress enough. I'm glad they exist, but don't expect to see any footage of me completing these challenges anytime soon. Let's get serious for a moment. I've been contemplating. Just call me extraordinary philosopher. I'm starting to think I'm not a skill games type of guy. But I'm glad to say there's always an exception to the rule, and Trials Rising is that exception. I say that because I had never tried the skill games in Rising until now, which I only tried for the review, and I was shocked when I didn't want to stop playing. Without a doubt, these skill games are the cream of the crop. From past experiences, they learned what worked and what didn't and perfected it. I was going to talk about my favorite skill game, but I had so much fun with all of them that I couldn't decide, so I made up my mind and have decided to do a ranking video ranking all the skill games. I'm not sure when, but it's coming. Yeah, coming hard. By the look on your faces, I think it's about time I wrap things up. The Trials games are an amazing series that will always have a special place in my heart, and the game I will definitely be coming back to every time I get the chance. I strongly recommend you try these games because to this day I haven't met anyone who's played the Trials games and not fallen in love instantly. Well, that's all I got for you today, my friends. If you made it this far, I can't thank you enough. And if you didn't, I don't blame you. This is my second review, and I feel like this was just a whole lot of incoherent rambling. So again, if you didn't enjoy the video, I totally understand, and if you did, you should probably see a doctor about that. Alright friends, until next time, have a nice day, a good night, have fun, and love life. Peace!